Today's topic is going to be, well, this 25-minute topic is going to be on ReactJS sans tooling, but it's also going to be a talk about to-do lists, because I love to-do lists, and I have sort of a theory that every app is really just a to-do list, right? So that's probably very, very inaccurate. But the way I like to think about it is I have an app, it's a to-do list. I have a bigger app, it's a series of to-do lists. I have a complicated app, that's a to-do list where the items are actually to-do lists themselves. And even though that's not true at all, if I can convince myself that that's true, then it's very, very easy to learn a new language, a new library, a new framework, because all I have to do is build the to-do list, right? And if I break that down to smaller components, maybe I just have to build the item. So that's a little trick I use myself when I'm learning a new project is to-do lists. So ReactJS, I think probably everybody's heard about it. It's this great, amazing framework. The only time I've run into people who didn't love React were people who got stuck from some tutorial that was bloated or some build tool that they thought they needed to have. So these are called roadblocks, and this is the single biggest problem with learning React is we have a ton of roadblocks. Now, these are only roadblocks in the beginning. As you go through React, these actually become very, very beneficial. But it's a big myth that you need to know these things to get started with the API. So the first one is tooling, which is kind of what my talk is about. How do I actually even get started with React? Do I just throw a bunch of scripts in the head? Or should I use NPM? Or what should I use? And how should I get started? The next roadblock is ES 2015, 2016, 2017. Because a lot of the original tutorials written in React, including the React docs, are in ES5. And then I go to get help on something, and it's in ES6. So what should I do? How should I learn this? The next is NPM. Do I need modules to make React work? Bundlers. Do I need Webpack? Do I have to learn the confusing Webpack config just to build a simple Hello World app? Probably not. Then at some point, you're going to run into Flux or Redux or ReactJS or any of these other great, great things, but they're going to creep into these tutorials that are supposed to be teaching you how to learn React. So we kind of watch out for those. Routing. Should I build a SPA? I heard React is only for single-page applications, right? I don't know. So these are all different roadblocks. Every tutorial you read at some point is going to probably mention server-side rendering. So we're going to ignore that. So maybe you're ready to get started with React, and you just grab a boilerplate. So you go to Google and you type in React boilerplate, and 5 million results come back, and every boilerplate is a little bit different, and they're actually very complex. So we have to dive through the code to even find out what's going on. Where's our entry point? A lot of the tutorials are very bloated. They don't talk about React. They talk about all of these other topics, and then finally we roll back around to React. So these things are all great, minus the bloated tutorials, but they're not great in the beginning. It's just too much all at once. So we do want to learn React. There's some great things about React. Here's a couple of them. The first one is we have one-way data flow. So all communication flows from the parent down to the child, or from the child back up to the parent in a callback. We have JSX, which is opt-in with React. This is HTML-like markup, so it's the code we already know. We can write this right in our JavaScript to define a UI component. Another feature that I love about React is the virtual DOM. So the virtual DOM is a copy of the DOM in memory that can diff against the real DOM and only make render updates to the changed data. So just to give you, I'm sure there's a much better drawing of this somewhere. This is my version. This is how the virtual DOM works in my head. Not like that. Okay, let's just close this page. Not that one. Stay. All right, let's see if we can go to a new slide. Stay. What wants my attention? Is it Slack? Come back. All right, we're going to open up a new browser over here. And we're going to go to collaborative. There we go. And we're going to skip ahead. We'll go max screen here. Skip ahead a few slides to roadblocks, roadblocks, roadblocks. Great things. And I'll go ahead and click this button. All right, so this is how the virtual DOM works in my head. So on the left-hand side, we have the DOM, the document object model. This is where your H1s and your divs and everything live. So maybe I have this unordered list of comments, and it's got 2 items, and then I have another list of blog posts or something where it's ABC. This is a blog post for my child turning 2 next month. And then in memory, we have the virtual DOM. So this is not shown on the screen. And some data's changed. So now our list has 1, 2, and 3. Our other blog post did not change. So we don't need to reload this entire page just to show the data. We can just do a diff. What's different between the data that's showing on the screen versus the data in memory? So this is where React comes in, makes that diff for you, and then does some hand-wavy magic and updates that one portion of the data. So that's my version of the virtual DOM. Okay, before I go into this, when I first made these slides, I made a to-do list app. I thought it would be great to explain this with a to-do list app. But a to-do list app is super boring. And I went to React Rally, and I saw all their great presentations, and I thought, there's no way I can get up here and build a to-do list app for you. It's lame for a conference. But then I remembered that every app is a to-do app. So I already had the code. So I'm going to present to you my sandwich shop. So we're going to make a sandwich. This is Sans tooling, but I am going to use one tool. It was created by the React team at Facebook. They felt our pain with configs and everything else to get started. So they created Create React App. Now this is a great starter kit, and actually you can just push this to production instantly with a single command. So it is production ready as well. So the way to get started with React that I've found to be the easiest is you're going to globally install this package, Create React App. Not on public bus Wi-Fi, but you should install it at some point. And then to create an app, all you have to do is say Create React App, the name of the app. Move into the app, npm install, and then start the server. Get out of here. And what this will give you is this nice React app that's all put together for you. But this is the great part. If I look in this package JSON, I have only 2 dependencies, React and React DOM. I don't have 5 Babel dependencies and a Webpack dependency and all of this other stuff. Just 2 dependencies. Now, I can't get the config files. They're hidden away from me. But at any given time, I can run the eject command, and this app will be ported, and all the config files will be made available to me. So this is a great way to get started, and then later on turn it into a real production application. All right, which screen's working? Okay, so once I do this, and just, by the way, these slides are actually built in React. So we can build almost anything with React. So when I go to the next slide, I'm going to have an actual React application inside of this slide deck using just these commands right here that I've run so far. So there we go. We have the Create React App starter application. We get the cool spinning React logo, and this is what you get to begin with. And it will tell you edit source app.js and save to reload the page. So it's got a little bit of hot reloading built in. So what does our React code look like? Now we can't learn React in 25 minutes, but I can show you how to get started and point you to some great resources that have helped me. So this is what you get with source in the app.js file. So we bring in React, and they bring in component because they don't like to type react.component, but you don't have to do that. They also bring in a logo because they want the React logo on your page. Hopefully you don't get rid of it. And then, of course, they bring in some CSS so they can do things like spin that React logo. Now, React components can take on many different forms. A popular pattern is to make them a class. But as you'll see later, we can actually make them just functions. A React component only has to do one thing, and that's return valid JSX. So if we make a class, the only function we need is a render function. A render function will be called every time state changes. And I'll go into that in a moment. There are some variations to that, so I'm lying a little bit, but for simplicity. So this is just JSX. It looks just like HTML. So it's the language we already know. We kind of have an idea in our head what this looks like. There's an image here. These brackets indicate some JavaScript's going to be evaluated. These are expressions. And then the one difference you might be seeing is instead of class, we have class name, and that's because, well, we can't use valid JavaScript reserved words here because this is just JavaScript. Okay? All right, so now if I want to put a React component inside of this React component, I can render it as if it were a DOM component itself, a DOM element, excuse me. So I'm going to make one, and I'm going to make a React component called Sandwich Shop. I just bring it in, a normal ES6 import there, and then you can see I just put tags around it as if it were a DOM element, and that Sandwich Shop element's going to render right there on the page. So let's take a look at what Sandwich Shop might look like. First of all, I'm going to bring in React. I'm bringing in 2 more React components that I'm going to write. One's called button panel and one's called ingredient. So this will help me break my app up into smaller little components. Now, I'm going to manage all of the state in the parent component, which is a pretty common pattern. If 2 child components need to talk to each other, I need to know when one updates. Then I'll manage the state in a parent component so that that state can be passed down to both child components. So I'm going to have a state called ingredients, which is going to be an empty array. Eventually, it'll be plain JavaScript objects. So this is what my ingredient looks like. Inside of my render function, I'm going to loop over all of the ingredients that are in my state. Never mind this index. I'm just doing some well, you'll see some z-index calculation. Then I return a React component. This ... syntax, if you're not familiar with it, this is just grabbing everything that I might possibly have on an ingredient, like an ID or a name or something like that. So these are just destructuring my objects. Then I'm just going to render my button panel here, and I'm going to render my ingredients. So this is an array of React components. So however many I have will be printed onto the screen. Yeah, so map is like a for each that will return a new array. All right, so here's my button panel, and I just wanted to show you the difference between a class versus just an actual function component. With a function, I just give it a name. This, where it says click handler here, eventually these will be props that are passed down from the parent. In this case, it's going to be a function that's handed down from the parent that says, when you click me, you'll actually be firing the function in the parent, right? Because we want to change state in the parent component. Then I'm just making up some buttons, some ingredients I might want on a sandwich, and actually just making buttons out of them. So here's my click handler for each button. You click it, it's going to go up to the parent and do something that I'll write in the next slide, and then it will say the name of the button. Nothing extremely interesting going on there. All right, so here's my ingredient, and this is probably gross and could be handled a lot better, but I'm just bringing in a bunch of images and attaching them to the class so I can easily get the source. Inside of my render, this is a single ingredient, so I want it to have an ID. I'm going to replicate a database here even though I'm not using one. I want to know what type it is, and never mind this index, because if you're good with CSS, you're probably looking at this and like disgust right now, but you'll see why I had to do this. I'm also inline styling, so anybody that wants to attack me in the parking lot. All right, so here on my ingredient, I'm returning a key. A key is nothing more than anytime I loop over elements with React, React needs to know some unique identifier. So it just has to be unique to that loop. And then I'm inline styling it here. I'm returning an image, and I'm returning one of my images that I stole from the internet. All right, so here's what I have. Now I have this button panel. Doesn't do anything yet because I haven't passed that click handler down. But at least I can click some buttons. So back to my sandwich shop. I'm going to make a function called addIngredient. And what this is going to do, it's going to push some data onto my state, so my state grows. I'm also going to make one called expand, just for fun. And then, sorry about this, forgot to put a space here, but it works anyway. I'm adding now an additional piece of state called expand, so it'll be either true or false. So what addIngredient looks like, I'm just making up an ID by calculating the length of the array and making that next number. So normally this would be like a database ID, but I don't have a database. So my ingredient's a plain JavaScript object that has an ID key, which is the value of ID, and a type key, which is the value of what type of ingredient this is, like bacon. Then I'm going to call this.setState. Now, when I call setState, render will be recalled if it has to. If any data has changed, render for any component that's subscribed to this state will actually update. So I'm going to change the state of my ingredients. I'm going to put my new ingredient on the front of the array, and I'm going to put all of the rest of my ingredients just as they were in the array. So I'm just adding to the top of my sandwich, because I don't know how to make a sandwich from the bottom, top down. So my expand function, all it does is change state. This is like a toggle, so if expand is true, I change it to false. If it's false, I change it to true, back and forth. So now, my ingredients, I'm actually going to pass that expand Boolean down as a prop. Props are similar to state, except for they're read-only. So this ingredient cannot dictate what expand actually is. Only the parent can change that state. Now I'm finally passing that click handler down called add ingredient. So when you click a button, an ingredient will be added. Finally, I'm just doing a ternary operator to say, is expand true? If so, then make the button say collapse. If it's false, then make the button say expand. So it's really easy to manipulate UI with React. So now I have this expand button. I have bread. I have lettuce. I have tomatoes. I have mustard. I have extra bacon. And I have more bread. And my expand basically just changes CSS to let me look inside the sandwich. So that was just something I did for fun. Yeah. Thank you. But wait, there's more. I got really hungry at React Rally when I was making that sandwich. So, okay, so now I want an ingredient list. I want to just add another component inside of this parent that's going to sit on the side, and it's going to tell me a list of my ingredients that are in my sandwich. I also want to be able to reorder ingredients on my sandwich, like move my lettuce above the mustard so it protects the bread from getting soggy. Or delete or just take the bacon completely off. I don't know if anyone would do that, but you can do it. So I'm going to make a component called ingredient list, and I'm just importing this into my sandwich shop. And it's all of the functionality of the ingredient list is going to be handled on the parent, because I really just need to manipulate state. If I want to move an item up on my sandwich, all I need to do is trade places with 2 items in my array. And same thing if I want to move it down. So I'm going to have a remove ingredient function, which just takes the ingredient right out of the array. I'm going to have a move up, which allows it to go up in the array, and move down, which allows it to go down in the array. So my move up function is what it is. I'm taking 2 elements in the array and switching places with them. And then I'm resetting state with my new array, which is item A and B now are swapped. Move down does exactly the same thing. It just does it the opposite direction. So I'm just moving elements in the array. My delete I forgot to put in the slide. I'm just filtering where the ID does not equal the ID that gets passed in. I'm returning a new array that way. So now in my ingredient list, I still need to know all about all the ingredients. Luckily, I already have them. I need that delete handler function. I need my move up function. I need my move down function. And I'm going to start to speed up. I'm sorry. All right, so here's my ingredient list. I bring in some icons so it doesn't look ridiculous when I'm up here. And I'm trying not to rely on a CDN. So my ingredient list takes in ingredients, the delete handler, the move up, and the move down function as a prop. Now I can fire one of these, and it will call up to the parent, change state. That comes back down and re-renders my ingredients. It's just a list item that says what type it is. And then I'm doing some calculation to see, should it have an up arrow, should it have a down arrow? Because you wouldn't want your top item to have an up arrow, and you wouldn't want your bottom item to have a down arrow. So I'm just, whatever I'm doing there, some code. It's all on GitHub. So I loop through all my ingredients. I find out if it has an up arrow, has a down arrow. And then I just render that ingredient. So it has up arrow. Again, it's just checking, is it the first item? Yeah, then it should have an up arrow. Vice versa. So I have same thing with my has down. So I'll be happy to talk to anyone about that later. So now I have bread, lettuce. I have this other component rendering at the same time. Even though these are different React components, they're sharing that ingredient state. So as it changes, now we can move our tomato underneath the lettuce, or move our bread to the top, just like that. Or we can get rid of lettuce, or whatever we want. So maybe you put the bread on. This is kind of how I would make a sandwich. What happened to my tomato? That's how embarrassing. There's a bug in that code, and I'm open to pull requests. So let's say that I make a sandwich by accidentally putting 2 pieces of bread and then a tomato, because I probably would do something like that. I can simply just move the bread up, and it changes to a new spot in the array, renders on the page. Everything's great. OK, before I do want to look at some code real quick, but I don't want to run out of time doing that, so I want to give you a few resources. So these slides are all hosted online. I'm using Surge, which allows you to host static assets for free. And it gives you a name. So it's cooperativeknight.surge.sh. Not hard to find. Just think of the Dark Knight after he's retired, and now he's very cooperative, right? I guess. All the code for the sandwich shop is on GitHub. You can find me on Twitter @djungst. I have a longer version of this talk. It's about an hour and a half on YouTube, where I actually build a to-do list, and we dive much deeper into state and props and all these kinds of things with React. So if you want to watch that. I also sometimes write some tutorials. This one just happens to be linked in there, but you can somehow work a computer. I don't know. There it is. So if you just take off the ReactJS sans tooling, I talk about other React type stuff too, like ES6, React project, a couple Rails gems that I maintain, things like that. So all those will be available to you. I'll also post them in the chat, the Slack. But now, what I want to do, so I want to try to get that one to work. Dang it. Localhost 3000. Let's go to the, no, it's on 3001. 3 minutes, because I know the break is next, so I don't want to keep anyone from break. So this is my Real Sandwich Shop app. It has other cool features, like if you add too many things, you get a combo breaker. So there's some like Easter eggs built into this one, right? But most importantly, what I want to show you is how the data changes. Where's the 5-minute guy? Am I good? 3 minutes. 2 minutes. OK, 2 minutes. So let's look at the React inspector here. And I'm just going to look at my sandwich shop. And you can see my ingredients are an array of 0 items. Now I add my bread, and that's an array of 1 item. So I'm really just changing the array. If I click expand, let's expand as false, the data changes to true, and the render happens. So anytime state changes, if something needs to re-render, it can re-render. So this is a great way to allow your data to describe your UI. I think that's probably all that I'll have. Well, I can show you one more thing. So I'll open up these ID2, ID1, ID0, and now I'm going to move the lettuce up. And you can see they just switch places in the array. So it's a very fast re-render. All right, I would love to talk with anybody who has questions about React. I'll be breaking, or you can find me any of those other places. And thanks for listening.